We are taking you live to Sydney, where AM Agenda host Laura Jays is introducing Prime Minister Anthony Albanese ahead of his keynote address to Australia's economic outlook.
There is every reason to be optimistic about Australia's economic outlook. Think about where we are, the fastest growing region of the world in human history. Think about what we have, the resources and critical minerals every nation needs to power its future growth and meet its net zero commitments. More than that, the space for refining and processing, the energy to power a new generation of manufacturing and industry, a world-class university and TAFE sector to train and prepare our future workforce, a superannuation system that facilitates nation building and makes us a significant global investor, and a multicultural society that, of course, gives us a family connection to every nation on earth. Then consider what we can do if we work together to make the most of these incredible advantages. If we invest in the potential and capacity of our people, if we make ourselves a clean energy superpower, an exporter of energy and a manufacturer of generation and storage technology, a standout destination for international investment from data centres to green metals, and a partner and provider of choice to the Indo-Pacific in everything from food and fibre to education and services. All of this adds up to a time of profound opportunity for Australia, but none of it will come knocking on our door or be gifted to us by anyone else. We have to back ourselves to go out and seize it. This means doing more with our traditional economic strengths and building beyond them. That's the strategic focus of our government's plan for a future made in Australia, and our support for buying Australian, from making it easier for families doing their weekly shop to choose Australian-made products, to ensuring that government procurement backs local business. We want to make more things here in a more competitive and diversified economy, boosting our resilience and our self-reliance, so we are not always the last link in the global supply chain. This is a safeguard against future global volatility, and it is an investment in our regional engagement, because adding value here means we bring more value to our trade partnerships. This is crucial, especially at a time when free and fair trade is under challenge. Making more things in Australia doesn't mean doing less with the Indo-Pacific. It means creating opportunities to do more. It was no accident that my first bilateral visit of this term was to Indonesia. Indonesia was where we launched Nicholas Moore's Invested, our strategy to drive a new generation of business engagement right across Southeast Asia, the fourth largest economy in the world by 2040. So many of you in this room are helping bring that plan to life with your direct links to these growing economies, just as you played a key part in our government's patient, deliberate and calibrated stabilisation of the relationship with China, clearing away over $20 billion in trade impediments, and now seeing our farmers, growers and producers set new records for their exports. All this underlines the fact that our government's support for making things here in Australia is not driven by nostalgia for an old economic model. It is shaped by our recognition of the new model that is emerging. The world is moving beyond the old equation which held that high-wage, open economies like Australia could not sustain manufacturing locally because we could not compete on price internationally. Instead, in the years ahead, comparative advantage in manufacturing will not be defined by minimising the cost of labour. It will be secured by the most productive use of technology, by cutting transport costs and by cheaper, cleaner energy. For Australia, the ability to co-locate extraction and refining and processing and manufacturing powered by renewables gives us an edge over so much of the world. Building these links in our national value chain also makes it easier for Australian research and innovation to be commercialised and developed here. And as a Labor government, we are determined to create the right framework and make the right investment in skills and training to ensure that artificial intelligence is a contributor not a competitor. An enabler of secure and fulfilling jobs, not a threat to them. In all of this, our nation does not need to go looking overseas for an economic model to copy. There is nothing for us to gain from a race to the bottom on wages and conditions, or the economic self-harm of tariffs. We want to do this the Australian way, not talking Australia down, holding true to our values of fairness, aspiration and opportunity for all, investing in our people, their ability to adapt to new technology and to develop it, and drawing out the potential of our whole country. Because building a more diversified economy is how we create a more decentralised one, bringing new jobs and industries from remote communities to the regions and to growing suburbs, as well as in our capital cities. This is the model that we have the opportunity to build, an economy that's more resilient and more competitive, more dynamic and more productive. An Australia that is stronger and fairer, indeed stronger because we are fairer. But in order to bring people and business and civil society with us in the pursuit of that vision, to mobilise all the talent and resources of our nation to meet this moment, we have to deliver here and now, to prove the practical value of a reforming government, to demonstrate that people's democratic choice makes a positive difference. This means ensuring our economy is rewarding Australians for their hard work, nourishing their aspiration and providing the security that enables people to build a good life for themselves and for their families. This is why our government is focused on repaying the trust that Australians have placed in us by delivering the policies that people voted for on the 3rd of May. Stronger Medicare, cheaper medicines, building more homes, lower taxes and higher wages so Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, and meaningful, lasting help with the cost of living. This Tuesday, the 1st of July, marked an important day of delivery. Another round of energy bill relief for every household and small business. The beginning of our Cheaper Home Batteries program, cutting 30% off the cost of installing a typical battery, permanently lowering power bills, but importantly as well, reducing peak demand across the network for everyone. From Tuesday, nearly 3 million Australians on the minimum wage or award wages received a real pay increase with a 3.5% bump in their pay. And the superannuation guarantee for all working Australians was raised to 12%. We're extending the instant asset write-off for small business. And our new $10,000 incentive payment for apprentices in construction is now open, helping to train more tradies so we can build more homes. And we've expanded government paid parental leave by another 2 weeks, up to 24 weeks. It goes to 26 weeks, the full 6 months next July. And importantly, for the first time ever, adding superannuation to it. So if you take time away from work to be with your new bub, you don't pay a penalty in retirement. These measures, together with cheaper childcare and historic pay rises for female-dominated industries like aged care and early education, reflect the fact that for our government, equality for women is not an add-on, it's not an afterthought, it is a central economic priority. And it is a source of pride that over the last 3 years, women's economic participation has reached record highs, the gender pay gap has fallen to record lows, and Australia has risen from being ranked 50th in the world for gender equality under the Morrison government to 13th, our best ever result. And whenever we talk about economic growth and productivity, we should all be mindful that equality for women is a powerful driver of both. Not just the right thing to do for a fairer society, the smart thing to do for a stronger economy. At this forum last year, I said our government's focus was winning the fight against inflation. Back then, many economists and our opponents said that the only way to bring inflation down was to drive unemployment up and to withdraw the cost of living support that we were providing for people under pressure. We held to our course, and last week proved how much progress Australia has made. Headline inflation down to 2.1%. In the Reserve Bank's target band 10 months in a row. There's already been 2 cuts to interest rates this year, and people will, of course, await a decision next Tuesday. Over the past 3 years, 1.1 million new jobs have been created, more than for any term of any government since Federation, and indeed the lowest average unemployment rate of any government in the last 50 years. Like every other advanced economy, Australia has had to deal with the worst global inflation since the 1980s and the biggest energy crisis since the 70s. But no other advanced economy has navigated this period like Australia. Working together, we have brought inflation down without sacrificing people's jobs, without cutting essential investments in skills, education, infrastructure and energy, and importantly, without cutting the services that Australians count on and deserve. With the worst of inflation behind us, our economy is indeed turning the corner. And our primary focus is shifting as a result, from bringing inflation down to getting growth and productivity up. The challenges we face in productivity have been more than a decade in the making. Turning things around will take time. Making lasting change always does. It will require cooperation as well, because this isn't a task that government can or should tackle alone. In a strong, dynamic and productive economy, government should be a driver of growth, but not the driver of growth. Facilitating private sector investment and job creation, not seeking to replace it. And that's where we look to the businesses represented in this room, from big employers to the millions of small businesses right around Australia. Our government wants you to be able to resume your rightful place as the primary source of growth in our economy. That is the essential purpose of the roundtable we're convening in Canberra in August. We are seeking a broad range of views so we can build broad agreement for action. Tax reform will be an important part of this conversation, but not the whole of it, because this is also an opportunity to build consensus around practical measures that can be implemented quickly, dealing with urgent challenges in a way that builds for the future. This is how we deliver and fulfil the agenda that we took to the Australian people, a plan defined by Australian values built on valuing every Australian. This includes making it easier for business to create jobs, start and finish projects, invest in new technology and build new facilities. Some of this involves government doing less, clearing away unnecessary or outdated regulation, eliminating frustrating overlap between local, state and federal laws. Yet value also lies in areas where government can do better. Better aligning our investments in TAFE and vocational education to deliver the skilled workforce that employers need, and making sure those vital skills can cross state borders in real time. Working to our ambitious goals in housing and renewables by getting projects approved and built faster, while maintaining our commitment to sustainability and safety. Continuing our reform of government services by setting new standards for access, quality and privacy. And ensuring that business has the workforce, the skills and the confidence to embrace new technology and embed its productivity benefits in their workplaces. We are convening this roundtable to help deliver on the commitments that Australians voted for. And because we recognise that the agenda we took to the election is the foundation of our mandate, not the limit of our responsibilities or our vision, every government should be in the ideas business, and no government should imagine it has a monopoly on good ideas. Whether or not you're a formal participant at the roundtable, we want you involved in the conversation, and I know that the media can play a role in that. More importantly, we want you to help drive the progress that comes from it and to share in the benefits. And that's the point I'll conclude on. The way that all of us, politicians, media, business, civil society, participate in this conversation matters. It really does. Because very often the public debate about change in our economy is conducted only in terms of dire warnings about what the consequences for Australia will be if we get it wrong. In order to build the broadest possible support for substantive economic reform, we should focus on what we can achieve by getting it right, by working together to anticipate change and shape it in our national interest, by empowering people and workforces and communities with a sense of choice and agency, creating the fundamental security here and now that enables people to plan and save and build for their future, and demonstrating that we're determined for new technologies and new industries and new ways of doing business to keep faith with Australia's enduring values, to serve that oldest and deepest of Australian aspirations, the determination to pass on a better life and greater opportunity to your children. These are uncertain times, and as ever, much of that uncertainty is dictated by events overseas. Now, we can't determine the challenges that will confront us, but we can decide how we respond. Let us continue to invest in our people, back our businesses, and importantly, back ourselves. Be proud of what we have done, so that we seize and share the opportunities ahead in the Australian way. Thanks very much.
Now, joining the Honourable Anthony Albanese MP, Prime Minister of Australia, Political Editor, Sky News Australia, Andrew Clennell.
Thank you.
Got your water, you ready?
Ready to go.
Thanks for joining us once again. I know you're sick of questions about Donald Trump, so I thought I'd start with that.
I've got practice at seamlessly segueing into...
Let's see what segues. I'm worried about your segues today. Are you more confident after Penny Wong's meeting with Marco Rubio you'll get this one-on-one meeting? And perhaps more importantly, even if you did, does it make a difference on things like tariffs and AUKUS?
Well, of course we will have meetings. There'll be a range of meetings between now and the end of the year with President Trump. Where all members of various forums, of course, Australia and the United States, so that will occur. But I'm confident as well that we will be constructive. But we know that no country has a better tariff, if you like, level than 10%. Now, we'll continue to put our case as we do, as I did with Secretary Bessent and Jamieson Greer and others on the sidelines of the G7 in Canada. Penny Wong was able to have a really constructive meeting with Marco Rubio as part of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting this week. We continue to be engaged with our American friends, but they have a different position on tariffs. I have said that's an act of economic self-harm. I stick to that. I have a different view about the economy and about trade. And the concern for Australia isn't, if you look at what the impact has been so far, our beef exports are up, our exports in a range of other products are up as well. Lamb's down a little bit. Steel and aluminium have been impacted, but not hugely. We are in a position where, on July 9, that won't really have an impact on us because that's about other countries who have higher rates overnight.
We won't get a letter on July 9? We won't get a determination?
Well, we're on 10%.
That's what we're going to stay on after next week?
Well, I assume that will be the case. The United States...
What about the steel? Do we see any...
No, well, we will continue to put our case. But bear in mind that during the first Trump administration, it took some period of time for change to occur then as well. We'll continue to put forward our argument. There aren't new steel plants have appeared since either January 20 or April. all that's happening is that the purchases of Australian products and indeed products from around the world are more expensive for the American purchases of those products.
But you had this conversation with Trump where he says, and he comes out later and says, I'll give great consideration to a change on steel, and then they don't deliver it. Is Peter Navarro the problem there, do you think?
Oh, I'm not going to get into the personalities, but...
you must have been disappointed when he didn't.
Well, we did have a constructive discussion, but President Trump, of course, made a decision that's consistent with his public comments. You know, when you
Except for that one.
No, well, when you're negotiating with someone, he did say that, but he has also said that there's no more beautiful word in the English language than tariff. Now, we have a different view. That wouldn't even be not in my to quote top 10 lists of all the thing at the moment in the odds this morning. That wouldn't be in my top million of words.
Could he pull the rug on AUKUS, or could he charge us more for AUKUS, or could he say you'll get less subs than the deal says?
Look, AUKUS is a good deal for Australia and it's a good deal for the United States. We are contributing to the industrial capacity in the United States right now. We need to, I think, be really proud of ourselves. It's one of the themes I hope came through in the speech there. I'll be speaking about our contribution. When it comes to defence and national security, we're not people who don't pay our way.
Do you fear he could pull the rug on it?
Well, I think that President Trump will know everything that he has said. He said nothing negative about AUKUS, nor have other people, including Marco Rubio, this week.
All right, so we're at the G7, I'm there with you, and you do a press conference where you're talking about what you're going to say to Donald Trump, you're about to meet him, you've consulted Greg Norman. Then half an hour later we get a tweet from Caroline Levitt saying Donald Trump is leaving the G7 after dinner. So your officials aren't told, you're not told. Well, you're told by Twitter. And after that...
I had you there to tell me.
Well, I did tell one of the departmental staff. I'll never forget the look on his face. Anyway, look, Trump then has a telephone conversation with Narendra Modi. He has one with the Mexican president. He invites Modi to the White House. We're right there. Is there something wrong here? Where's your phone call from Donald Trump in that sense?
I've had three. I've had three.
But isn't it just courteous of him not to call you?
I'm not worried by someone making an understandable decision, which he did, to return to Washington. And one of the things that we've got to do, Andrew, and if you compare it with some media overseas, is we've got to stop talking Australia down and look for, this is a decision by the United States. The Australian government haven't made a decision about tariffs. We're not imposing any, we're not replicating. You know, we speak about reciprocal tariffs. We're not making a difference there either. And the relationship between Australia and US officials, we have people when it comes to AUKUS. There's over 60 people currently in Hawaii working essentially through our naval personnel getting those skills. We have people in the United States. I've been on the Hawaii sub when it was in Western Australia. There was an Australian submariner working on that. Like, we're getting on with things, and we need to, I think, talk Australia up.
All right, that's fair
about what we contribute in defence and security, what we contribute in our region.
Understand, but
is pretty unique.
Let me put this to you. Is the problem Kevin Rudd? I mean, he basically called him a traitor to the West, a village idiot, the most destructive president in history. Dan Scavino, one of Trump's staffers, put on that hourglass. A Trump pollster, Brett Buchanan, tells Laura Jays on air the other day that the president doesn't like the ambassador.
A Trump pollster from the election before last and the one before that.
I think...
You know, so...
Yeah, but is there something to this, you know? Is there fire where there's smoke?
No.
So the administration's told you they've got no problem with Kevin Rudd, despite what he said?
Yeah, it's been very positive, and he's had meetings, and when I went to the US, the connections that Kevin Rudd has, as much as people might be have had a view about Kevin over a period of time. No one could doubt his capacity, his hard work, his ability to work strongly. The discussions that I've had have been very positive, nothing but positive in comments that have been made to me.
So he's not a bar to any phone call, any meeting, anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me move on to the productivity roundtable, the big theme of your speech then. Now...
And no American political person would talk down the US ambassador to Australia. I make that point.
What if a US ambassador had called you a bunch of nasty names? Would you be inclined to...
Well, JD Vance had some things to say too. He's now Vice President of the United States of America.
Okay. This productivity roundtable, you never promised this before the election. Did you intend before the election to call this, or is this because you've got this huge number of seats now? So you say, well, now I can actually do reform.
No, well, before the election, we had a pretty ambitious agenda that we put to the Australian people. It wasn't something we developed during the election campaign. It's consistent, what we said, with what the speech I gave here last year and the speech I gave the year before. We have a view going forward that we've been taking every opportunity to outline. Last year, of course, so the primary concern was about inflation, and the primary concern of punters, of voters, of listeners and viewers or readers was cost of living. Now, that's still front and centre. I've got to tell you, on July 1, the concern that Australians had wasn't over who met whom where. It's paid parental leave, it's their wages going up, it's the tax they pay, it's whether their kids will be able to afford a home. They're the issues that we want to concentrate on. And my government has been laser-like focused on that, and we were during the election campaign and the lead-up, and in discussions that we had, both on air and outside. I would have said that to you, and why I was confident about an outcome, because I thought that only one side of politics was talking about things that mattered to people. And so the agenda going forward on productivity is an opportunity early in a term to bring people together from business, civil society. We've invited the opposition to participate as well, and have a discussion about things that aren't immediate, aren't about the 24-hour media cycle, they're not about the next week or even the next year. It's how does Australia position ourselves for future growth, and part of that has to be productivity. And when you have productivity which is basically flatlined for decades, you know, isn't something that's emerged just since we came to government. It's been there for a long time. We want to open up dialogue for discussion, just as in the first term we had a Jobs and Skills Summit that led to the creation of the Jobs and Skills body that makes those recommendations and involves the private sector. We want to have dialogue, and we think it's a useful time early in the term.
You mentioned tax reform in your speech.
Yeah.
Are you open to raising the GST and lowering income tax?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to avoid is just that question.
You brought it on the agenda, though.
No. What we're trying to do is to have an adult conversation. And what has occurred over a long period of time is that people, you know, is it on my agenda? No, it's not. Okay?
Would you consider it?
No. But one of the things we're trying to do is to not say we're going to have this forum and people are entitled to come along and have ideas, but at the very beginning we're going to do interviews between now and August where we get asked by you and others to rule things in or out.
I'm not asking you to rule it out.
Yes, you are.
I'm asking if you'll consider it.
Yes, you are. People are entitled to put forward whatever they want to put forward.
What's your instinct about it?
It's not well, you can ask it different ways, but it's the same question, Andrew. And it's the same headline that you're looking for. And what I want is a mature...
I'm actually curious, as is the audience, I'm sure, to what your view is about increasing the GST and lowering income tax.
Well, no, it's not something that we have given any consideration to. But if people want to put forward ideas, we're not saying these are the conditions, you know, you can put them up. We, of course, will take into account the response. I mean, I'm a supporter of progressive taxation. Consumption taxes, by definition, are regressive in their nature. So that's something that, you know, doesn't fit with the agenda. But people are entitled to put things up. And this will not succeed if we have the next month being asked day after day after day what are effectively, as much as you put it very politely and skillfully, essentially asking for, you know, headlines to be written of Labor open to considering XXX.
Well, let's see what else you're
And then what happens on day two is we rule it out.
Would you like...
So if we want to go down that track, we can.
But let me just ask you two principles here.
Yep.
Would you like to see lower income tax in this country, including for the top rate?
I always want to see income taxes as low as possible and wages as high as possible.
Including the top marginal rate?
Well, we're the first government to reduce the top marginal rate. We increased that threshold.
Keating did.
No, in recent times. Paul Keating was last century. This century...
Showing my age.
This century, we are the first government to change the top rate in a long period of time.
Did you change it again?
The Conservatives were there for 10 years. They didn't do anything about it. We lifted it from 180 to 190 so that when we changed stage 3, something that was, you know, we didn't envisage, we would go to the... When we went to the 2022 election, we didn't envisage that we would change it. I was fair dinkum about that. Circumstances, with the cost of living, with the pressures that we're on, with inflation, meant that I think it was a responsible thing to do. We did it. They said, our opponents said they would oppose it and we should go to an election on it before they voted for it. And now no one that I've seen comment for a long period of time says we did the wrong thing.
Would you like to see lower company tax in Australia?
I want to see taxes. Of course I want to see taxes as low as possible, consistent with providing appropriate services and consistent with the overall macroeconomic interests of the country being looked after. So I'm not going to play the what is effectively, you're inviting me to do, the sort of rule in, rule out game. You can look at our record of what we have done, which was when we made that stage 3 change. One of the things that was argued for was that we should not have that tax decrease at the top end and just put it back into revenue, put it back into consolidated revenue. What we did, there was $106 billion of tax cuts were envisaged under stage 3. Our changes were worth $107 billion, but they meant that people didn't get left behind because we made sure right through the thresholds. Sure. And at the last election, I remind you, there's only one political party that went to the election arguing for lower taxes, sure, and that was the one that I led.
All right. You know, you talk about tax reform. What about some spending reform? I mean, the NDIS is pushing past $50 billion. It's projected to cost $64 billion. It's the third highest cost in the budget. Are you happy with the situation where 11% of 6-year-olds and 15% of Australian 6-year-old boys are on the NDIS?
No, I'm not.
Is it time to take kids with mild autism off the NDIS?
No, I'm not. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is to make the system more sustainable. It had been allowed to just drift over the 3 terms of the former government. My government intervened, credit where credit's due. Bill Shorten and credit where credit's due. The opposition supported the reforms that we put in place.
Will you have another go at it?
We will always look for spending to produce better value, because if the NDIS, had we not done that reform, our concern is that the vision of the NDIS is a great one. It's one we should be really proud of as Australians, of looking after people so that they benefit, but importantly as well, the whole society benefits if people can fully participate, including the economy. And we need to make sure that it is made more sustainable. We are working through the reform issues as well with state and territory governments because it certainly the vision of the NDIS wasn't that those sort of numbers that you just quoted go on the system. And when you have well over 500,000 Australians on the NDIS, but you've got to be responsible about how you do it and work through with the sector because it's very easy for vulnerable people to feel like their support is threatened. We don't want that. People who need the NDIS need to keep it. But also, there were massive rorts in the system. That's the truth.
Let me ask, because this is one of the themes again of your speech about business taking over, where we've had a real kind of surge of government, state and federal spending, creating jobs. The AI Group, Australian Institute Group, recently analysed data and found that in 2024, the Australian economy added 410,000 jobs, 148,000 were in the public sector. Another 209,000 were in what you could call the non-market sector, so health, education, things involving government funding. Only 53,000, or about 13%, were in the private market sector. This tells a tale of a bit of a sick economy in the private sector, doesn't it?
There's a range of different figures have been used from time to time, and in order to tell a story to back up something that people want to argue for. The truth is that overwhelmingly a majority of the jobs that were created in the last term were not government jobs. But it's true that there has been a growth in areas like the NDIS, as well as aged care. We've put a promise that we made in the 2022 election that I'm really proud of delivering, was putting nurses back into nursing homes. And now there is a nurse present 99% of the time in our aged care homes. Now, that's a good thing that we have done that. It's a good thing in terms of getting higher ratios of care to people to enjoy that dignity and respect in their later years.
But your IR reforms and your renewable energy target, when you talk about stripping away regulation, I guess they're examples of the hand of government making it harder for business. Would you concede?
No, I think that paying people fairly actually assists business. I think that the reforms that we've put in place there have been sensible reforms going forward. I'm proud of the fact that real wages have risen now 7 quarters in a row, and prior to us coming to office, they were falling. One of the things, if you look at the United States and you look at what's happened to the political system there, the disruption that occurs, it's a very divided society. And if you look at areas of, the Rust Belt states, as they're called, with the decline of manufacturing, are feeling like people don't have a stake in the system. One of the things that we have the opportunity to do in Australia, and what my government is laser-like focused on, is making sure that people don't feel like they're left behind, that they don't have that stake. That's why we need to make more things here. That's why blue-collar work matters. That's why my government intervenes from Whyalla to salmon to a range of areas as well. A Labor government will always support jobs and will support people having a stake in society, and we don't make apologies for that. We think that importantly can assist business rather than a sort of race to the bottom.
We're out of time, but allow me 2 more. Are you minded to make any changes to the superannuation tax proposal on accounts of more than $3 million. Are you minded to alter that at all? There have been a few other proposals around.
Well, proposals around, but the proposal that was put forward, we put forward in the last term, would affect just a very small number, 0.5%.
So you're keeping it on unrealised gains and the rest?
0.5% of people were impacted by that.
You're not minded to change it?
Well, we went to an election on it, and we have, as I said, half a percent of the population are impacted by it.
And finally, I have to say after this discussion, I've still got an eyebrow raised about the productivity roundtable and what we're actually going to see about it, whether it's going to be bold reform.
That's the point, Andrew, though. The point of a productivity roundtable is not to have it preempted, not even on Sky News, a month before it takes place.
Is this because you've often had a philosophy to the left? You've probably been more centrist than people would have thought as Prime Minister. But
people haven't been paying attention if they think that.
Is this you going to a Hawke-Keating type era of government in the Albanese government?
I think that is the way that I have always governed and the way that I sought to govern and what I put forward from the day that I became Labor leader in 2019. If you look at the work that we've done, take our emissions program, we did that, stood up at a press conference with the Business Council of Australia, the Australian Industry Group, ACCI, conservation groups and the ACTU. That's always been my model. I think that Australia works better when we engage people across business, unions, as well as civil society. The CFMEU was let rip under the former government. My government intervened to put it into administration when it was appropriate. My government has always sought, and I've always sought and built a really strong relationship with business. If you look at my period in public life, probably one of the things I'm most proud of is the creation of Infrastructure Australia. In my previous incumbents as a minister, that involved people from the private sector, chaired by Sir Rod Eddington, a News Corp board member internationally, was the chair, as well as Ken Henry and Heather Ridout and people in industry, working out how do you change the way the infrastructure investment happens so that it drives productivity going forward. If you look at, so that was in that portfolio. In regional development, I set up Regional Development Australia. That involved regional bodies looking at regional economic growth, involved the private sector there. The Australian Council of Local Government I established, that brought together for the first time the Commonwealth and every mayor around the country in a 2-day forum. Not all the cabinet ministers were wrapped by this idea, but it was really positive as well. It's something that has characterised all of my political involvement since I've had the opportunity to be a minister in 2007 under Rudd and Gillard, but as Prime Minister as well. And that's why I always reach out to forums. I've participated in this one now, I think, at least 3 years in a row, and participate regularly across the board. I think that's how you get change, by engaging with people, including, that doesn't mean you always have to agree, but if you shut down the debate before you've actually got people in the room. So the productivity roundtable, for example, I'll give you a bit of a preview. I'll start off, give a spiel, if you like, an opening of what potentially people might want to discuss, but we won't say you can't get in the room if you're going to raise issues or you can't put forward ideas. It's the opposite. And it costs nothing. The worst that can happen is that people develop relationships because they've spent a couple of days together. I'll host people at the lodge on one of the evenings as well, and so we've got that worked out. But we want people to genuinely have a stake. There's a I think it was Confucius, someone will point it out, no doubt if it's wrong, who said, if you think you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Now, I don't think I'm the smartest one in the room. In the country, I happen to have a responsibility as Prime Minister, and part of that is mobilising the capacity of people in this room and people who watch Sky and people who watch whatever and read whatever publication to say, okay, if you've got a good idea, put it forward. We'll give it consideration.
Great, not like Malcolm Turnbull then. All right, Anthony Albanese, thank you, Prime Minister, and please thank the Prime Minister for his time.
Thanks, mate.